Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are entering into one of the most debated areas of Hindu matrimonial law, that is, restitution of conjugal rights, commonly known as RCR. At first glance, the idea appears very simple. One spouse leaves, and the other spouse approaches the court and says, "Please direct my spouse to come back." But the moment we look deeper, the question becomes much more difficult. Can law really restore a marriage? Can a court order a person to return to matrimonial society? And if the court does that, is it preserving a marriage or is it entering into the private zone of autonomy, dignity, and intimate choice of an individual? This is the tension that we are going to examine today. As the slide shows, the topic can be studied through three lenses. First is RCR as an attempt of restoration of marital society. Second is the defense, especially that of reasonable excuse. And third, the constitutional debate around Article 14, that is equality before law, and Article 21, which deals with personal liberty. So keep one question in mind throughout this lecture. Can law restore marriage without entering into privacy and autonomy of an individual's life? In the previous lecture, I left you with a true story and a question to ponder upon. That true story forms the backdrop of a famous case about RCR, that is the case of T. Sareetha versus Venkat Subbiah, to which we will come later in this lecture. For now, let's see the story of Mr. and Mrs. Sharma. Rekha, who is resident of Pune, gets married to Rakesh Sharma, who is from Delhi. After marriage, Rekha leaves matrimonial home and moves to Pune to continue her work with the same company she was already working for. Rakesh calls her a few times and convinces her to come back and live with him again. Rekha says that she expects a career growth from the company by becoming a manager over there. After several failed attempts to convince Rekha to come back and live with Rakesh, Rakesh goes to a court in Delhi and files a petition. It is the petition about restitution of conjugal rights, that is RCR. Now pause here. Is it wrong for Rekha to continue her career pursuits after marriage? Of course not. But think about Rakesh for a moment. He expects Rekha to stay with him in Delhi. Now, how will court decide this matter based on this situation? Neither Rekha nor Rakesh is right or wrong. It is merely a matter of difference in opinion and expectations and priorities in life. Understand the court's procedure and decision in case of petition of RCR filed by Mr. Sharma. This will help us understand the topic practically. Now, for a moment, let us have a closer look at case file of this petition filed by Rakesh Sharma for restitution of conjugal rights. The fact number one is Rekha leaves the matrimonial home and moves to Pune for work. Fact number two is her husband Rakesh files a petition of RCR. And the third fact is Rekha replies that she has a good reason to leave. Now this lecture will follow a scheme where we will keep facts first and statutes second. Ultimately, we will come to constitutional limits. This sequence is very crucial because it is often very tempting to jump directly into constitutional arguments. In litigation, however, the court will first try to find out what actually happened. Why did she leave? Was it because it was all about employment? Was there cruelty or neglect on part of husband and his family members? Was there an unsafe matrimonial environment? Only after understanding the facts and circumstances, we can apply Section 9. So the question before us is that should the law treat marital cohabitation as a strict prerequisite or should it respect reasonable excuse? When it comes to RCR, the central problem is that can court restore a marriage without crossing the boundary of personal autonomy? That is the core question. Now it is important to understand that Section 9 converts a private matrimonial breakdown into a judicial inquiry. This sentence is very important. A husband and wife may have private dispute, one leaves and other wants reunion. But once Section 9 is invoked, that private dispute enters into the courtroom. Now the court has to examine four things. First is withdrawal from society. And observe the word when either husband or wife has. It talks about either of the spouse, either husband or wife. So this provision is basically gender neutral. Second one is talks about reasonable excuse, and which is also a defense against a petition of restitution of conjugal rights. Third one, it will check the truthfulness of the petition. And the fourth important thing that the court will check is there any legal bar to the relief. And if all these four conditions are met, a decree of RCR may be passed in favor of the petitioner, making him a judgment creditor. So every RCR case begins with an application by either spouse stating the other has left the matrimonial home. The court finally intervenes and checks the facts. For Rekha's case, the question is not simply did she leave Rakesh's home. The question is also that did she withdraw from marital society without any reasonable excuse. So, in a petition of restitution of conjugal rights, the first and foremost thing that the court will examine is the fact that is there a valid Hindu marriage at first place. First, you have to establish legal relationship, then only you can discuss withdrawal. And the restitution is a matrimonial remedy. Without a valid marriage, there is no marital society to restore. So, a valid Hindu marriage, the existence of a valid Hindu marriage is the first and foremost thing that the court will examine in a RCR petition. We also need to understand the meaning of restitution. A decree of restitution does not mean that it enforces sexual relationship. The decree of restitution only talks about consortium, cohabitation, and companionship, and it is not a judicial order for enforcing sexual relationships. Understand that a decree of restitution of conjugal rights follows four checkpoints broadly, and they are existence of a valid marriage. Second one is withdrawal from the society of the partner, and third one is there should be no excuse, meaning that there should be a lack of any justifiable reason for the person to leave the marital home. And lastly, petition must be true and there must be no legal bar. These are further conditions required for a maintainable RCR petition. Now we come to one of the most misunderstood expression in section 9, that is withdrawal from society. The question here is, does living in different cities means that the marriage has broken down? Not necessarily. Residing in different location is a fact, whereas when we say withdrawal from society, it is a legal conclusion. Separate residence alone does not automatically prove withdrawal from society. Suppose Rekha is in Pune for work and Rakesh is in Delhi meanwhile. Is that withdrawal at this point? Maybe yes, maybe no. We need more facts. Is she refusing to communicate? Is she refusing cohabitation permanently? Is she away only because of employment? Or is there cruelty or neglect on the part of husband or his family? So this is a legal nuance that we need to understand. Ask whether consortium has been willfully refused, not merely whether addresses are different. Now this particular Venn diagram gives us a very useful framework. Withdrawal is proved by reading three things together: distance, consortium, and intention. First, we come to distance, where we ask, why is the couple living apart? That is the first question we ask. The second thing is consortium, where the question is, has marital society been refused? And under the third thing, that is intention, comes the question, what do the facts show? Now apply this to Rekha. She moved to Pune for work. That is distance. But did she refuse marital consortium? That is a separate question. Did she say, I will never live with you? Or did she say that I left because of a justifiable reason? The court reads matrimonial conduct as a whole. So, again, the key point is not merely residence, whole conduct matters. Now we come to the question of reasonable excuse. When is leaving the matrimonial home a legal defense rather than a wrong? This is where section 9 becomes non-prejudicial to the petitioner as well as the respondent. Because even if withdrawal is shown, the respondent may still defeat the petition by proving reasonable excuse. So in Rekha's case, the entire matter may turn into a question that did she leave without a valid reason or did she have a legally acceptable reason to live in Pune? Reasonable excuse is a pivot that can defeat RCR petition. The respondent may justify living apart by showing facts related to cruelty, neglect, non-maintenance, or say unsafe environment, or allegations of second marriage, illicit relationships, or conduct that makes cohabitation unreasonable as well as difficult. Now notice something. A party cannot simply say I was unhappy. The party must prove and show the facts, what happened, when did it happen. So the question is the refusal to return without cause or is it a response to the petitioner's own conduct? Now let us begin with a very interesting activity here. The activity is named as frame, argue and share. So what we will do is I'll pose a question to you and you will have 90 seconds. You will have to pause the video and within 90 seconds, you will have to frame the issue from it and then you will have to argue from both sides. And finally, in the comment section, you will have to share what you have come up with. So the breakup will be in first 20 seconds approximately, you will frame the issue and next 40 seconds, you will argue from both sides. And finally, in last 30 seconds, you will write what you have come up with in the comment section. So I am posing the question, you will have to pause the video. The question is, if a wife leaves because she fears cruelty and the husband files RCR, whose burden is it to prove what? Pause the video. So the question was, if a wife leaves because she fears cruelty and husband files RCR petition, whose burden is to prove what? Let's frame the legal issue first. Do not answer emotionally. Ask, who is the petitioner? What must the petitioner show? Who is the respondent? And what must the respondent prove? Now, within next 40 seconds, argue from both the sides. From the husband side, who is the petitioner, he may say she withdrew from the society. From the wife side, who is respondent, she will reply that withdrawal was justified because there was fear and cruelty. Now let's return to the statute and compare as to what we have come up with and what does the statute say. The petitioner first shows withdrawal from the society. Once reasonable excuse is raised, the person who withdrew must prove that excuse. So let us return to Mrs. Rekha's example. If Rekha says she had good reason to leave, what facts must she prove? That is the legal reasoning that section 9 demands. So in this slide, we have few grounds given which can be used easily as a defense in RCR petition, and the mnemonic for it is HRNSC. H stands for harm, which includes cruelty or apprehension of harm. R stands for relation, where second marriage or illicit relationship is being alleged. Third is neglect, where non-maintenance or neglect of husband or wife is involved. S stands for safety, when there is unsafe environment at the place of cohabitation. And finally, C stands for conduct, where cohabitation is made unreasonable by the conduct of the petitioner. Let us understand shifting of the burden of proof. The burden shifts only after withdrawal is shown. So the step 1 is petitioner shows withdrawal from the society. Step 2 is that the respondent raises reasonable excuse, and finally the third step involves that the respondent proves the excuse with facts. So what is the decisive factor over here? Withdrawal opens inquiry, reasonable excuse decides the result. In Rekha's case, if Rakesh proves that she left matrimonial society, then Rekha must show why that separation was justified. Now we move to a very important question. Can the state compel return without compelling intimacy? This is where RCR becomes constitutionally sensitive. Because if a court passes a decree, what does that decree actually do? Can the state physically bring the spouse back? Can the state force intimate relations? The answer is no. RCR is a civil remedy. It does not bring state or police into picture. And this becomes central point in the defense of section 9, and that is the reason section 9 has been upheld as constitutional by several courts time and again. Now let us understand how a court executes a decree of RCR. A RCR decree cannot be enforced by bodily force, that is the first point. And the remedy does not involve physical return, and physical return can never be compelled. The entire process remains civil in nature and the consequence always remains civil. Thirdly, remedy is described as conciliatory. The court does not send police or other agent to physically return the spouse. The decree is not a license to validate compelled sexual intercourse. The decree remains always civil in nature. Now, whether even civil pressure is constitutionally acceptable or not, that is a separate debate. But the courts have used these enforcement limits to uphold Section 9 as constitutionally valid. Now comes a strategic side. A restorative decree can later become a divorce route. When court passes a RCR decree and directs restoration of marital society, if there is no cohabitation, means there is no resumption for the statutory period, it may become a ground for divorce. Non-compliance may support divorce. So now a difficult question rises. Was the petition actually genuinely filed for a legitimate reason, or it was filed as a first step towards divorce? This is why RCR is sometimes called a remedy with two faces. On paper, it tries to restore the marriage, but in practice, it may become a route towards dissolution. Now let us pause again for 90 seconds when I pose you the question, and let us do the same activity again to frame, argue, and to share what you have come up with. The question is, if a spouse files RCR only to create a legal divorce ground, should the court treat that differently? Now think for 20 seconds and frame the legal issue. The legal issue is motive relevant? Is the statutory requirement still satisfied? Can the court refuse relief if the petition is not genuinely conciliatory? Now let us argue from both sides. One side may say that if the statute permits it, motive should not defeat the remedy. The other side may say that matrimonial relief is discretionary and the court should not encourage tactical misuse. Now we come to the constitutional conflict. The question is Section 9 a reconciliatory tool, or is it an intrusion into personal liberty? This is where the famous case such as T. Sareetha, Harvinder Kaur and Saroj Rani come into picture. These three cases give us the full constitutional journey of RCR and the greater debate of constitutionality of Section 9 of Hindu Marriage Act. The constitutional journey of Section 9 Hindu Marriage Act moves from strike down to defense and then finally to approval. First, in T. Sareetha versus Venkat Subbiah, the case of 1983, the Andhra Pradesh High Court struck down Section 9, calling it unconstitutional. It viewed this remedy against autonomy and privacy. Later, in the very next year, that is 1984, the case of Harvinder Kaur versus Harmandir Singh Chaudhary, This took place in Delhi High Court, and this case upheld Section 9. It viewed the remedy as reconciliation and a step towards preservation of marital society. There was dichotomy in the views of two high courts at this point, and ultimately it was resolved by Supreme Court in 1984 in Saroj Rani case. Let us understand T. Sareetha's case. The T. Sareetha framed Section 9 as against privacy and autonomy. If the state, through the court, directs a spouse to resume conjugal society, then the state is entering into a deeply intimate area of life. The challenge treated compelled cohabitation as affecting privacy, dignity, bodily autonomy, and liberty. T. Sareetha case asks that can a person be compelled, even indirectly, to resume intimate marital association? The question remains relevant even today. Harvinder Kaur takes the exactly opposite route. The Delhi High Court rejected the idea of the forced intimacy. It said that the decree does not command sexual intercourse. It is directed as a cohabitation and consortium. So Harvinder Kaur tells us that restitution cannot be equated with forced sexual relationship. It shall be treated as an attempt to restore marital consortium and marital society. Finally, Saroj Rani is the leading authority which has upheld the Section 9. This case is important because it comes from Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has actually accepted Section 9 as a reconciliatory mechanism which is totally constitutional. It rejected the idea that Section 9 of Hindu Marriage Act violates Article 14 and 21. So for the present legal position, Saroj Rani is the anchor case. When writing or arguing, the first statement should be very clear about RCR that Section 9 has been upheld by Supreme Court in Saroj Rani case. Now this slide captures the continuing debate. On one side, we have individual autonomy. Can intimate association be court-directed after modern privacy doctrine? Privacy, dignity, and individual freedom, all of these are constitutional values. On the other side, we have reconciliation. Should a personal law be allowed to encourage restoration attempt before divorce? Consortium, family stability, and civil processes. These are values used to defend this remedy. So where does the balance lie? The present understanding is that Section 9 is upheld by the Supreme Court. T. Sareetha case is overturned as a precedent. Now when a RCR petition comes up to the court, what should the court analyze first? Because some RCR petition may be genuine, but as we saw in some cases, it may be a tactical attempt to create a ground for divorce. It may even be some defense against one's own wrong. So the court must test the real purpose and real facts. An RCR petition may be conciliatory, tactical, or defensive. From the petitioner side, one has to prove withdrawal and the absence of legal bar. And on the other hand, from the respondent side, reasonable excuse has to be given along with facts. From the court side, justice, safety, and legality is to be ensured. This is very important practical lens. Always ask a question: what would reconciliation mean in real life? If a matrimonial home is unsafe, ordering return may be unjust. If the respondent has no genuine reason to withdraw, refusing restoration may also be unjust. So Section 9 is not arbitrary. Its use depends on facts and circumstances of the case. Now this is basically a checklist of judicial checklist of Section 9. What the court will observe, what are the things that court will observe and ensure before proceeding with a decision on RCR petition. This is very important slide. You should take a screenshot of this. First thing is a valid Hindu marriage, whether it exists or not. Second is clear withdrawal from the society of one spouse. Third question is the separation justified, or is there any reasonable excuse? For example, fourth, cruelty, neglect, or unsafe living environment. And if the legal excuse is proved, then the averment put in the petition, whether they are truthful or not, that is checked. And finally, it is checked whether there is any legal bar or not. And ultimately, The relief is provided without any coercive action since this is a civil remedy. Now we come up with final position. When marriage breaks down, should law intervene and restore the relationship or should it step back? This is an unresolved question behind Section 9. The law gives us one answer, the constitutional debate keeps asking another, and as a student of law, we must understand both. Let us now conclude. Today we have learned how Section 9 of Hindu Marriage Act has faced constitutional scrutiny. However, the present view of Apex Court has upheld its validity. But it tests law's limit inside marriage. On one side, there is marriage which the law intends to restore. On the other side, there is personal autonomy which is constitutionally protected right. Let us summarize. Firstly, RCR tries to restore marital society. Secondly, withdrawal must lack reasonable excuse. Thirdly, no physical force can be compelled for return. And finally, non-compliance may result in civil remedies such as attachment of property. Now that you have understood restitution of conjugal rights, you are ready to move to the next stage of matrimonial relief, that is judicial separation and divorce. In the next lecture, we will explore a different question. If Section 9 tries to bring spouses back together, when does the law accept separation is justified? And when does it finally allow the marriage to be dissolved? Judicial separation and divorce will be our next topic for discussion.